particular idea or a particular body of work.
Okay, good. All right. We're going to jump now. I mean, we're up at that point. There's two things that brings to mind. One is the feedback process from the learner back to curriculum development, instructional development, content design. And what we need to go into next is the authoring tools that make feeding this kind of a system possible, right? And how those work. Before I leave the learner interface, and it's very critical, I mean, at some level I can tell that this group would be as interested in the authoring system as it is in the learner interface. But like I suggested, we are talking about a transceiver. We're talking about a series of tools to create materials that would then be folded into an environment that this would unfold according to the relationships we're talking about. More specifically on your question, my local personal travels are kept local to my machine, okay, until such time as they're dumped as feedback back to the system. And I'll describe that now. And then we'll jump to the authoring tools. One of the things I mentioned when we first started talking, or earlier when we were talking, was the necessity of mutually learning-oriented relations as the context in which we could all learn to do these kind of things. One of the things that presupposes is that we're learning from the learner at the level that's relevant to their learning. One of the problems with curriculum design and development right now is that it is very assumption-laden. It's not plugged into the moment-to-moment fluctuating learning needs of learners. It's based on all kinds of assumptions and measurement processes which are weeks to months after the fact, after the learning event. So one of the questions we have is, how do we turn this whole thing into a lens through which curriculum developers and instructional designers learn more about learners? That occurs at two levels. One is, everything that a learner does is captured anyway. So if we go back here, these are the references that we've looked at today. By type, by where they were. Simulate, we looked at a movie. Galileo, we looked at a picture. Philosopher, we looked at a dictionary. Darren, we looked at a picture. We looked at an alternative language of that sentence. And representationally, we looked at the people part of gravity, the central thread, the key points, the roots or etymology, and we looked at, we fired an external simulator on gravity, and we looked at an external hypercard stack on gravity. So this information of everything we do is actually flowing into the system and being captured in very economical ways. But the most important part of feeding back to curriculum, well, because that's very important, is what we allow the learners to do, which is, let's say I'm looking at gravity. I go to gravity and it says, got a dictionary, an encyclopedia, and sound. Yeah. So there's an encyclopedia. But what we don't have, I really wanted to see something that was a simulator of gravity. So if I hit a button, if you will, I go into the feedback mode, and now the full array of possible choices fires to me as a learner. Now when I select the movie icon or the simulator icon, a little window that comes up that says gravity, movie, feedback. By pressing a button, I've sent a message to instructional design or curriculum design that says, I, a learner, when I encountered this, had a meaning need that would have satisfied for me, or that's what I think I wanted, but it wasn't there. We allow learners to do that at every level. Now you might say, well, geez, we're going to get inundated with information. Yeah, there is a challenge to topographically summarize this information and distill it into information that will really help us. But I'd argue that without that kind of information, the sync problems between curriculum design and learners are enormous. And that in order for curriculum to evolve to a point that it really starts to fit in a way that's appropriate for the general needs of the education system to facilitate subject matter competency and fit in a way that's consistent with what we've been talking about learners, requires that the whole design of curriculum be done with the intention that it's a learning lens to better learn how to do it. And that if that isn't in fact the case, that we need to have this kind of that whenever the learner bumps, falls, has a meaning need, somehow the system needs to learn about that. This is one way. There's a bunch of other ways. This is the way we built it in here. And it also works representationally. So as I move through, I can say, I'm in the scientific mode, and what I really wanted to know was, I wanted to see the laws, the scientific mode, the laws feedback. There wasn't any, right? Now I'm typing in something, really don't have to do that. The learner could have just said that. The scientific mode, laws, feedback. It wasn't there. Why not? I want it. It would have helped me. But I could also, as a learner or as somebody in the system, go into the research library, go into something else that you've made, for example, right? Some hypercard stack or some other application, grab the content, intellectual property problems set aside for a moment, and move the content into this window and fire it back. So now, back at what I'll call the educational interface, I'm seeing that both a simulation about gravity was asked for and the laws were asked for by the student. Now envision, if you will, a teacher that's showing, okay, that's particular to this monitor's going all up and down and that one's not, so. So there's a monitor for teachers, if you will, that's showing the kind of preferred representations or reference dropouts that the whole class has had as they move through this space. And at another level, at curriculum design, you could see this being topographically summarized into prioritizing where the optimizing efforts are made by content designers and curriculum designers. So how is that accomplished? No, let's do it that way.